right, guys, welcome to the Buff Show. Today, I got Michaela Kerrigan with me. So
We're back.
thanks for jumping on. It's been a minute.
It has been a little while.
You had a baby and kind of disappeared.
Off the face of the planet for a minute. It's been good, but I'm ready to be back.
Yeah, I know how that goes. It's hard. Most recent babies are pretty close in age and everything. So it's a struggle. Those first few months are a grind. So, well, today we're going to cover, if you're a buyer, how do you make your offer stand out? And maybe if you're a seller and watching this, what are some things that buyers could do to make their offer more appealing and different things like that? So we kind of have an outline, but this is to educate buyers on, let's say there's this house that you guys really want and you're just like you got to have it, right? You don't really care. I mean, obviously you want to pay as little as possible to get it, but what strategies can you implement to, help you get the house? And I think every situation's different. Sometimes there's no competing offers. We just need to present a strong one. And other times, like I've seen 20 plus offers on a house. Like, how do you compete with 20 other buyers? You have to get really creative.
Sure.
So we're going to kind of start like very basic, like what are the basics, like a good competitive offer, and then kind of dive deeper into what's a really aggressive way to handle it and what are the pros and cons to that. So, sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, you want to start out with maybe some of the basic fundamentals to a good, strong offer.
Yeah. So I think from a seller standpoint, the things we're looking for is earnest money, quick deadlines, stuff like that. Just a clean offer. I don't even know how to explain it. Like,
what would you say is like a good amount of earnest money?
Usually I like to advise people 1% of the purchase price, but I feel like a common amount is $5,000-$10,000.
Yeah.
It's pretty common.
Yeah. And I think that's common because like our median average sales price is around $500,000-$700,000. So yeah, it's funny because when I got started in the business, you would see $500 all the time for earnest money.
Really?
Mm-hmm. $500 to $1,000. And, but I guess that makes sense because like the first house I bought was like $180,000. And so you were like a little bit less than 1%, but like, yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, typically we see you want the earnest money to be close to like 1% or above. If you want to make a really strong offer, let's increase the earnest money. Like I've seen people do $100,000 earnest money like that. You're like, dang, like this person wants a house. And the thing to realize about earnest money, it commits you, like it shows interest or like, desire. I don't know. It shows your ability to perform basically to where if you back out after certain dates, that earnest money would then go to the seller. But equally as a buyer, that earnest money commits the seller as well to the deal. So if a seller is like, yeah, I just don't think I want to sell the house anymore, and there's only $500 earnest money, technically they could break the contract and they would be on the line for $500, like liquid damages that they could pay you that you could take, which just isn't that much money. So it's kind of a strength point of the contract where the higher the earnest money, the more valuable the paper is, I guess.
Kind of makes everyone put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, for sure. What's another thing that a buyer can control in their offer?
So I think a good down payment is something that they look for too. Like if an appraisal comes in a little bit low, are you going to be able to cover those things? Or are you fully qualified to buy this home? Have you been pre-qualified with a lender?
Mm-hmm.
Are you a solid offer that's going to follow through with a purchase?
So down payment, like a lot of agents and buyers, when I get these, they'll leave it like with the balance of the purchase price in cash. Like it's section E, 2.1E of the REPC. Mm-hmm. They'll leave that blank or put TBD. I'm like, if you have $200,000 that you're putting down on the house, let's put that here. Because you're not committed to it because it says the purchase price shall be paid as provided in sections 2.1A through E below. Any amounts shown in C and E may be adjusted as deemed necessary by the buyer and lender. Like you don't need the seller's permission to, if you had cash to put $200,000 down, but then you get into it and you're like, actually, I'm just only going to put $100,000 down. Like you can totally do that and you don't need the seller or lender's permission, but it's always better to put the most that you're able to do so that you look strong in the seller's eyes, basically.
Right. Because if you're bringing like 100,000 to closing and someone else is bringing 10, like you're just more solid. more qualified buyer.
For sure. And then another thing that you can obviously control is the price. So like if you're going to go in 100 grand under list price, like good luck. So you have to be aware of like, what does the seller want price wise?
I think that's a big thing we do as agents. Like when we find out you're interested, that's one of the first calls I make. Hey, seller agent, like what are your clients looking for in an offer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because then you get to know, like, are they looking for a quick close? Is price most important to them and they don't care about the timelines? Mm-hmm. Do they want like a lease back? And we're going to dive into some of those other things. But like having that knowledge of what the sellers are after is like, that's a huge key to the puzzle versus just writing a blind offer and being like, I'm not sure exactly what they want. Mm-hmm. Don't do that. So another thing that I would say is a negotiating factor is included items. Are you asking for, the Mustang that's in the garage, that's a classic car, and you want that to be left with the house? Because that's going to dramatically determine like, oh, well, these guys want this as well. I just had a deal where the buyers wanted like all the sound system and the equipment in the house. And like they had all these different boxes and they're like, every box is $800. And they had like a bunch of these boxes. So like a decked out, like sweet sound system, the sellers wanted to take it and the buyers obviously also wanted it. But if you really wanted the house and you didn't care that much about the sound system, just use your Alexa and settle with that and let the sellers take that's obviously their dream. Let them take that. And maybe that helps the offer become a little bit more appealing to them,
Like you run into a lot of that with appliances, like the fridge.
Yes.
So many people are attached to their fridges.
Yeah.
So adding those things or taking them out can look better in a seller's eyes because they're not having to part with those things.
Yeah. Okay. And then I would say possession, section 3.3 of the REPC, where it talks about when will the seller deliver possession to the buyer. So if you put yourself in the seller's shoes, okay, we're selling our house and then we need the funds to then maybe buy a house or close on the house or whatever. Like a lot of sellers don't necessarily want to move out right away or move out before they have the funds in the bank. Like that's intimidating. However, I think for liability purposes, like me as an agent, I think once the house is closed, you need to get out and the new person needs to get in.
Yeah.
But we can delay possession where it's closed, the seller gets the money into their account, and then they have 24, 48, 72 hours to get out before the new buyer then takes possession of the property. I typically think anything over like 72 hours, we just need to put into a short-term lease back.
For sure. And
keep in mind, most lenders will not let you do a lease back longer than I think it's 60 days.
I think that's right.
Yeah. And so you can maybe control the possession timeline. Like I have a few deals that we've recently closed where the sellers had a week or two to get out of the property. And so it gave them the cash. They were able to like close on the next deal, get the movers, get everything set up and get out of the house. Just realize there is some risk there because what if the house burns down? Who's liable, right? Yeah. So like I always try and avoid this, but it is a negotiating factor as well. And then just coming down the line, like if there's any special assessments from the HOA, some HOAs, like there's a reinvestment fee when you sell. Who's paying that? Obviously, the seller's going to want as much money as they can get net to them at the closing table. So if you can affect that any way you can, I think they would appreciate that. The other thing would be like the home warranty. Are you asking for a home warranty? Do you really want a home warranty or just kind of want it? Because those are like $600 to $700 on average too. And then I would say before we go like deeper into the contract, I would just say deadlines is the other one. So what would you say is like a standard contract window that most people close within?
I think normally from your under contract date to your closing time is 30 to 45 days.
Yeah.
Is what we like to see.
And so that puts like, I typically look at it, you have a few deadlines. If you look at section 24 of the REPC, you have your seller's disclosure deadline, which that's more for the sellers, getting you all their disclosures, but due diligence deadline is for the buyers. And that's for you to do your home inspection and everything like that. Sellers are looking at that as, okay, like the buyers are not locked in or committed during this time frame. So as short as we can have that, the better in the seller's eyes, but you need time to get all your test results back and your inspections. So typically I see like 2 weeks there. And then financing and appraisal, what do you normally see there?
You're usually 3 to 3.5 weeks.
Yeah. And then settlement deadline, 4 to 6 weeks. Yeah. So I'm usually like 2 for due diligence, 3 to 4 for financing and appraisal, and then 4 to 6 for settlement. So if you want to be competitive, make these quick, make them like fast. There's nothing preventing you from doing let's say there's this house you really want. You already, like before you even wrote the offer, you called a home inspector. Hey, how soon can you get in? Oh, we can get in 24 or 48 hours. Sweet. Then you could do like a 7-day due diligence period. You could bust that out super fast. So like you can shorten up these dates to make your offer more appealing to the sellers just by making your preparedness like faster.
And that's where like the pre-approval comes in, because if you're pre-approved, your financing and appraisal deadline can be shortened. All they need is an address at that point. And so, yeah, if you're talking to an agent and a lender ahead of time, it makes your offer so much stronger than if you come in and you're like, well, we mentioned it to a lender, we might be approved for this much. So
what's the difference between pre-approval and pre-qualification?
So the pre-qual, it's based on what you tell the lender.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the pre-approval, they pull your credit, they look through all of your documents. You are approved for that amount as long as the home passes.
So I'm not going to advise this to people, but like there's been times where in competitive situations, we have waived the financing and appraisal deadline because my clients were pre-approved and we knew that financing wasn't an issue for them.
Yeah.
And we just ordered the appraisal during the due diligence deadline. And like, because they have any reason they can back out for during due diligence. So we just made sure to get everything done due diligence wise that they wanted to. Just so happens that the appraisal was one of those items that they wanted to complete during that time. And then should the appraisal come back low, obviously they could figure out a reason why they didn't want to proceed with the contract, right? So there's ways that you can make your offer appealing, waive certain things, but still get the other things done in time. Just be super fast on it. And so I've seen lenders, like if a lender has you pre-approved, everything's there, you can technically close a deal with a loan in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
With the right lender.
Which is crazy fast.
Which is like a cash offer. Like that's what cash offers are like. We'll get you wrapped up in 2 weeks. But like buyers, if you're ready, you can really do that. So just like, I guess, ask yourself, how prepared are you to make this happen? So I think that's like kind of the basics. Good, clean offer, no house to sell, good amount of earnest money, good down payment, knowing what the sellers are after, letting them take the fridge or the washer and dryer. If like those are minuscule details. Like it's funny how many deals get blown up over $1,000 or $2,000, right?
Yeah.
We want the washer and dryer. No, we do. And it's like, okay, guys, this is a big house. Like there's more to this house than just the washer and dryer. Are you going to let it get blown up over a washer and dryer?
I think that's a conversation we have to have a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Like let's zoom out, big picture here. Do you want the washer and dryer or the house? So, and then like possession, giving the sellers more time, potentially doing a lease back. Okay. So now let's dive into, Michaela, this is your dream house. There's 20 offers on the table. What are you going to do to be competitive and stand out?
Taking me back in time a few years.
Yeah.
So I think your non-refundable earnest money.
Okay.
That's going to be big because that shows them, hey, like we love this house. We don't care if an inspection comes back bad. Like we're in this, right? And so you can do that upon acceptance, or you can do it just at your due diligence deadline, which upon acceptance, I feel like we were seeing a lot 2 years ago. Nobody ever recommends that because you want to do your due diligence. But once you hit that due diligence deadline, if you're comfortable with your financing, it's safe to go ahead and do some non-refundable earnest money. And I think that goes a long way in a seller's eyes.
Yeah, that's like saying, hey, with this offer, you get 5,000 non-refundable earnest money. So there's layers. You can do your earnest money non-refundable after due diligence. So it just allows you the time to do an inspection. You can do a portion non-refundable upon acceptance. So say your earnest money is $5,000. You could be like, hey, $1,000 of our earnest money is non-refundable upon acceptance. Like you're
Yeah,
gambling a little bit because you don't know if the house has issues or not.
for
But
sure.
then it's just a portion. So you're kind of like hanging that carrot out for the sellers, like, hey, we're locked in $1,000 right from the get-go when you accept that. I like that because you're not committing the whole earnest money, $5,000.
For sure.
Because as a buyer, you have to think about you have a home inspection that you have to pay for, which if you do everything, you're probably $1,000 or more. If you're doing the general inspection, meth, radon,
Yep.
sewer scope, like all those things. And so you have to look at like you're going to have expenses during the due diligence phase. Add that to the non-refundable portion. What are you okay losing if worst case scenario the house doesn't check out? I really like that way. We just did like on a house last week. Our earnest money was $5,000. We did 1,000 non-refundable after due diligence. That's what it took for the sellers to be like, hey, we'll accept your offer, but will you do this to make them feel a little bit better inside? So now my clients have $1,000 on the line because they had a house to sell too. So, but their house was already under contract. And then the other offer that we were competing with didn't have a house to sell, but our offer was still more appealing, even with the house to sell. So there was like a number of things we did to try and get them to feel good about it. So earnest money is a big one. Are you willing to make basically put your money where your mouth is, make a portion of that non-refundable depending on certain points of the contract? Obviously, quick deadlines is another one. Escalation clauses is another one. If there's 20 offers, you can say, hey, we're willing to pay, let's say the list price is 500. But you already know there's offers above 500 because there's 20 offers. And so maybe you're willing to go to 550. You'll be like, hey, we're willing to beat any other competing offer by $5,000 up to 555. But the seller just has to provide proof that there is another offer up to that point and that it's an arm's length transaction, meaning it's not fake. It's not like their cousin is just submitting a fake offer in there.
Just to get us up and over a certain price point.
Yeah.
And you can cap that too. It's like you'll pay up to $550,000.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you can cap that. There's an appraisal guarantee, right? If we're worried about the appraisal, you can basically say, hey, we will pay in the event of a low appraisal, we'll pay up to X. So let's say we're confident about the house appraising for 500, but we're offering up to 520. And maybe the buyer's willing to guarantee an appraisal floor of 510. So anything between 500 and 510, they would make up the difference. But if it's over 510, they're not agreeing to make up the difference there. That's another strategy. There's
so many strategies. Like
Yeah.
I feel like you could go for days about things that you could do and structure with each different contract.
Right. Another like kind of going back to the basics, I think depending on the agent that you have, like making sure there's a pre-qualification letter sent over to the opposing agent, the listing agent, having the lender call, being like, hey, these buyers are so qualified, like that goes a long ways for a listing agent. Just making sure you have the right team in place, which I would put that back with like the basic fundamentals of writing a good offer. Do you have the right team, and are they going to go to bat for you when presenting the offer to the other party?
I think that's a huge one,
Yeah.
especially as agents, because we work with the same agents here and there, right?
Mhm.
And so if you work with a bad one, you're like, hey, seller, like, I don't know if you want to accept an offer from these guys. This
Mhm.
agent's not great.
Yeah, this was my past experience
Mhm.
working with them. Yeah. And a lot of the lenders we work with, like I'll be like, hey, we're submitting an offer for these clients. Can you call the listing agent here and just vouch for them? And then the listing agent doesn't need to call the lender. The lender's calling them, which is cool.
Kind of on top of your game, and that's going to be a smooth transaction from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Other than that, though, I mean, those are the biggest levers that you can really pull. I mean, obviously, inflating the price, waiving some of your inspection, like your due diligence period or the financing and appraisal. Like I told you, I've I've waived the financing and appraisal and just got that all done during due diligence because the buyers were already ahead of their game.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're a fast buyer and you're already pre-approved, like you technically don't really need a financing contingency because right? And then you could just waive financing, keep appraisal. You could do that. And then like giving another talking point is giving, like we've done lease backs where the seller can stay there for free for a month after, 2 months after, 3 months after. I've seen like delayed lease backs where the buyers just let the sellers stay there until they can find a new house or whatever. Or and you can assign like rent on those deposits, or you can just say, hey, you can stay there for free until you find a new place. Like there's a bunch of different things here that we can like bring into effect depending on what the needs are for the seller.
For sure. I think the only issue you run into is if it's a primary residence. We spoke about this earlier. Like the lender's going to want to see possession in 60 days.
Yeah.
But
otherwise you're going to have to put like 20% down.
Yeah.
So
at that point it becomes almost an investment property.
Mm-hmm. Anything else that you can think of that we need to throw in here?
I don't think so. I just think, like a dream offer to come over would be like high earnest money.
Yeah.
Comes in at asking price or over and no contingencies and quick deadlines.
Yeah.
So if you love a house and can do it.
Yeah. And that it all comes down to how bad do you want the house, right? If you don't want the house that much, then make the offer according to that. Like everybody's going to have their limit on what they're willing to pay for a house. And so just make your offer match that desire.
For sure.
If it's your dream house and like you absolutely have to have it, it's next to your parents, like you're not going to get another opportunity to buy a house like that. You might be okay slightly overpaying or whatever for that opportunity. So just being aware of, and that's a really hard thing for buyers. I ask like my clients, I'm like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad do you want this house? If it's a 10, we're going to like pulling all the strings trying to make it work. If it's a 7, like maybe we won't be as aggressive on some of these things. Like what are you going to sleep good at night knowing that you did in order to get this? If you get it under contract and you're like, crap, we just put $2,000 non-refundable upon acceptance. Like, I'm not sure if we want it. Like that wasn't probably a good idea to do 2,000 non-refundable. So
it's gone.
Yeah. So hopefully that helps you guys, like as you're thinking about this, what to offer on the house. We've all been there. I've bought multiple houses. You bought multiple houses. Like we feel for you. It's an intimidating point to be in your life. I would just say like 5-10 years down the road, you're going to look back at some of these minute details of like, I just see people argue over a couple $1,000s or a washer and dryer. And I'm like, you're not going to care 10 years down the road. So I think sometimes it takes people to have a broader picture and maybe be the bigger person to be like if the sellers take the washer and dryer, that's not going to wreck me financially. I will survive, And so, but only you can decide how bad you want this house and what you're willing to sacrifice and risk to get it. So hopefully that helps you guys in the process. And until next time.